After my husband passed away, my in-laws felt sorry for me because I was pregnant. They asked his twin brother to take on the responsibility of continuing the family line for both families. My sister-in-law, Maria, cursed me for being shameless and fainted from anger and crying. At night, I went outside my in-laws' door. I originally intended to persuade them to give up this idea, but I accidentally heard my mother-in-law ask in confusion, "Clearly, it was your elder brother who died back then. Why did you insist that it was you?" The man let out a sigh. Maria is in poor health. If she knew that my elder brother had passed away, she definitely couldn't bear it. Moreover, the person I love has always been her. I married Linda back then just to fulfill her and my elder brother's relationship. Now, I've already given Linda a child, so I don't owe her anything. In the future, I will take care of Maria for the rest of my life on behalf of my elder brother. Please don't mention the matter of taking on the responsibility for both families anymore, so as not to make Maria sad. Only then did I understand that it wasn't my husband who had died, but his elder brother, Alex. The next day, at the dining table, I said to my in-laws, "You've always been urging me to move on. I've thought it through now and decided to have an abortion and start a new life." The man who was taking care of my sister-in-law's meal beside me suddenly stood up. "Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day." Now the story begins. After my husband's funeral, I was diagnosed as pregnant. For the sake of this child, I tried my best to suppress the pain in my heart. I was afraid that my emotions would affect the fetus. However, due to my husband Colin's congenital weak sperm, I had an especially difficult pregnancy this time. I not only had to get injections every day to protect the pregnancy, but I also vomited so much that I almost fainted. I had only been pregnant for a little over a month. I had already lost more than 20 pounds. I was almost half dead. Later, my in-laws couldn't stand it anymore. They advised me to have an abortion, forget about Colin and start a new life. But I refused all their suggestions. Colin was so good to me. How could I bear to give up? In fact, the person I was originally engaged to wasn't Colin, but his elder brother, Alex. But before the wedding, I was kidnapped by kidnappers and tortured and humiliated for 3 days and 3 nights. Alex thought I was unclean and broke off the engagement and married Maria instead. It was Colin who rescued me, battered and bruised, from the kidnappers. He was stabbed several times at that time, but he still held me tightly. He firmly knelt in front of my father and said that he had admired me for a long time and wanted to marry me as his wife. Over the years, everyone said that he loved me deeply. Under his gentle care, I gradually healed the wounds in my heart bit by bit. Unfortunately, the good times didn't last long. Just 3 years after we got married, he died in a car accident. My world collapsed, and I even wanted to follow him. It was this child who gave me the motivation to live again. This is his only bloodline. Even if I had to risk my life, I would keep this child. When my in-laws saw that I was insistent, they didn't persuade me anymore. But on the next day, while we were having lunch, they proposed that Colin's twin brother, Alex, take on the responsibility of continuing the family line for both families, to take care of me and the child in my belly. I was about to refuse, but my sister-in-law Maria suddenly had an emotional breakdown. She slapped me in the face and cried while scolding me for being shameless. She was already in poor health and didn't give me a chance to explain. Under this stimulation, she fainted from anger. My elder brother-in-law Alex frowned and gave me a displeased look. Then he carried Maria away, lovingly. This slap from Maria made me have another bout of threatened abortion. I lay in bed for 2 days before I felt a little better. I didn't blame Maria. I had an engagement with Alex in the past, so it was understandable that my sister-in-law had some misgivings. What's more, not to mention that I had a good relationship with my husband Colin. Even if our relationship wasn't good, what my in-laws proposed was really a bit ridiculous. It wasn't just the two of them as a couple. Even I didn't agree to Alex taking on the responsibility for both families. I felt a bit guilty for making my sister-in-law faint from anger. So, after I was able to get out of bed, I went to my in-laws' room. I wanted to persuade them to give up this idea and never mention it again in the future. I also thought that after persuading my in-laws, I would go to my elder brother and sister-in-law in person to apologize, so that they could be at ease. Unexpectedly, as soon as I reached the door of my in-laws' room, I heard my mother-in-law's confused voice coming from inside. "Colin, clearly it was your elder brother who died back then. Why did you insist that it was you? Colin. Wasn't that my husband's name? He wasn't dead. The person who died in the car accident turned out to be my husband's elder brother, Alex. I was immediately struck like by lightning. My eyes widened, and I stood there in a daze. How could this be possible? I shook my head vigorously, thinking I was hallucinating. But the next second, a man's voice came from inside. Mom, don't let Maria know about this. She has always been in poor health and has a weak heart. If she knew that it was my elder brother who passed away, her body definitely couldn't bear it. Alex. No, I should call him Colin. My husband Colin. He paused and then sighed, saying, moreover, the person I love has always been Maria. I married Linda just to fulfill Maria and my elder brother. Now, I've given Linda a child, and I don't owe her anything. In the future, I will take care of Maria for the rest of my life on behalf of my elder brother. Please don't mention the matter of taking on the responsibility for both families anymore, so as not to make Maria sad. But Linda has already had a tough life. Back then, you had someone kidnap Linda on purpose for 3 days and 3 nights to break off her engagement with your elder brother and fulfill your elder brother and Maria. She suffered so much humiliation. Now that she has finally moved on and is pregnant with your child, it's only right that you take care of her a bit. My mother-in-law wanted to persuade him further, but Colin interrupted her impatiently. Enough, Mom. To make up for her, I married her without caring about others laughing at me for being a cuckold. Then I took care of her wholeheartedly for 3 years and helped her move on. Isn't that enough? Do you want me to spend my whole life repaying her? Mom, I've suffered for 3 years and pretended for 3 years. I've had enough. Living with her was a torture for me every single day. Now God has given me a chance to stand by Maria's side again. I don't want to give up this opportunity. I couldn't hear what else was said inside. I just felt my body go cold. It was as if someone had stabbed me hard in the chest. The pain was unbearable. After staggering back to my room, I realized that I was shaking all over, and my face was already covered with tears. It turned out that the person who died in the car accident wasn't my husband at all, but his elder brother, Alex. And Colin's deep love and gentle care for me over the past 3 years were all fake. The person he liked was the same as his elder brothers from beginning to end. It was only Maria. Even the person who had me kidnapped by the kidnappers back then was Colin. The reason was simply that he wanted Maria to marry Alex. If they didn't want to marry me, they could have broken off the engagement openly, but they had to ruin me instead. What was even more ridiculous was that I had regarded this devil as my savior, and I was even willing to risk my life to give birth to his child. Although I tried my best to calm down, but the hatred and anger in my heart still made my tears flow uncontrollably. The next day, with red and swollen eyes and a pale face, I went downstairs. I saw Colin carefully taking care of Maria while she was having a meal. The two of them were snuggling together, showing their affection for each other. From a distance, they really looked like a perfect couple. I clenched my fists. The stinging pain in my palm made my mind clearer. Soon, Maria noticed that I had come downstairs. Seeing my embarrassed appearance, there was a hint of pride in her eyes. Then, as if to demonstrate, she buried her head in Colin's arms and acted coquettishly. And Colin's whole heart was on Maria. He was concentrating on taking care of her while she ate. He didn't notice my arrival. I lowered my eyes and looked at his doting smile towards Maria. I felt extremely sarcastic in my heart. This kind of doting was something I had never seen in the past 3 years. I touched my belly and calmly sat down on the dining chair. Then I lowered my head and started eating. I picked the nutritious food. I forced myself to eat more. I would have an abortion, take care of my body, and then make those who had hurt me pay double the price. After I finished eating, I wiped my mouth. Colin had also finished serving Maria's meal. Only then did he have the time to look up at me. When he saw my red and swollen eyes and pale face, he was slightly taken aback. He probably thought that I had cried again because of his death, and there was a moment of guilt on his face. But soon he turned cold and said unpleasantly, "Sister-in-law, I know that you're sad about Colin's death, but I won't agree to the matter of taking on the responsibility for both families. My heart only has your sister-in-law Maria. It's impossible for me to give even a bit of my heart to you." Maria looked at me with even more pride in her eyes, but on the surface, she still pretended to be worried and said, "Sister-in-law, you didn't cry all night just because my husband doesn't want to take on the responsibility for both families, did you?" "I'm sorry, I was too impulsive yesterday, but But my beloved husband, I really can't give in. As she spoke, her delicate body trembled, and her eyes turned red again. She covered her chest, looking extremely sad. Colin was heartbroken and glared at me warningly with a serious face. Then he lovingly held Maria in his arms and comforted her. Maria, don't worry. You're the only one for me in this life. I will never touch another woman even if I die. How ironic. What about the child in my belly? Did it appear out of thin air? However, he was indeed dead. I suppressed the bitterness and anger in my heart and stopped looking at the affectionate couple. I nodded forcefully, suppressing my nausea. Don't worry. The matter of taking on the responsibility for both families is really ridiculous, and I won't agree to it either. After hearing my words, Colin turned his head and looked at me in surprise. I looked up and saw my in-laws coming downstairs. They had also heard what I said just now. They looked at my pale face and red and swollen eyes with a look of pity. My mother-in-law hesitated to speak. Linda. I looked at my in-laws, and my heart was filled with mixed emotions. Since I married into their family, they had indeed treated me well. Their concern during these days was also genuine. But when I thought that Colin had been the one who had me kidnapped and tortured by the kidnappers for 3 days and 3 nights, and they all knew about it, they just kept it from me alone. My feelings for them became indescribably complicated. I couldn't call them Mom and Dad anymore. You've also heard it. The matter of taking on the responsibility for both families is too ridiculous, and I don't agree to it. My mother-in-law probably remembered what Colin had said yesterday, so she didn't persuade me anymore. She just let out a sigh and said, I know that you have deep feelings for Colin and can't forget him, so you definitely won't agree to this matter. But Mom really feels sorry for you. She paused, looked at Colin, and then said earnestly, Linda, Colin has already passed away, but you're still alive. People always have to look forward. Mom still wants to persuade you not to keep thinking about him all the time. Move on and start a new life as soon as possible. Colin and Maria beside them. Upon hearing that I didn't agree to the matter of taking on the responsibility for both families, obviously heaved a sigh of relief, and their expressions improved a bit. However, Colin looked at me with a more complicated look in his eyes. Listening to my mother-in-law's words, he also started to hypocritically persuade me. Sister-in-law, Mom is right. Colin has already passed away. No matter how much you love him, you're now separated by life and death, and it's impossible for you two to be together. You still have to live your life in the future. Forget about him as soon as possible. It's good for both you and him. Fortunately, he left you a child, which can be considered as a bit of a thought. In the future, without him, you can still live with his child. For the sake of the child in your belly, you have to be strong and move on as soon as possible. Listening to Colin's high-sounding words, I couldn't help but sneer in my heart. A child. Did he still expect me to give birth to his child? He was simply daydreaming. I felt extremely sarcastic in my heart, but on the surface, I still pretended to be touched and followed their words. You're right. I thought about it all night yesterday and finally figured it out. I was really stubborn before and made you worry. Moreover, since Colin had weak sperm by nature and this pregnancy is so difficult, it must be fate that he's destined to have no descendants in this life. So, I want to follow the will of heaven and listen to you. I will have an abortion, completely let go of him, remarry, and start a new life. After saying that, I touched my belly and thought, after all, Colin was such a wicked person. Not having a child was already a lenient punishment. I was even afraid that if I gave birth to his child, it would be born without an anus. So, for my sake and for the future of the child, I couldn't give birth. I looked up and saw that everyone present was stunned after hearing my words. My in-laws looked a bit anxious for a moment. Colin's face even twisted. After all, hearing me say that I was going to have an abortion and that it was fate that he had no descendants, there was no way he could be happy. He stood up abruptly. Subconsciously, he angrily blurted out, "Who told you to have an abortion?" However, after saying this, he quickly realized that he had overreacted. He took a deep breath and tried his best to control his emotions, but his expression still wasn't very good. After a moment, he couldn't help frowning and said in a reproachful tone, "Sister-in-law, Colin has just passed away not long ago, and you want to have an abortion and remarry someone else. Isn't this a bit inappropriate? This is after all the only bloodline he left in this world. Moreover, he was so good to you back then. What you're doing now is a bit too cruel." I blinked my eyes and looked at my in-laws with an innocent expression. Didn't you keep persuading me to let go of Colin and have an abortion? My in-laws' faces turned a bit awkward. They didn't look very happy either. After all, no one wanted to hear that their son was destined to have no descendants. They quickly composed themselves. They all looked at me with a look of disapproval. My mother-in-law sighed. Linda, Mom knows that this pregnancy has been painful for you, and I've always been worried about your health. Before, I wanted to persuade you to let go of Colin and have an abortion, but you care so much about this child, and Mom really doesn't want you to have any regrets in the future. My father-in-law also chimed in. Yes, Linda, have you really thought it through about having an abortion? Before, when we tried to persuade you, you were clearly so resistant, saying that this was Colin's only bloodline and you absolutely wouldn't agree. Are you really willing to have an abortion? Don't make a decision on impulse. Of course, Mom and Dad support your choice, but we just don't want you to regret it later. As for remarrying, of course Mom and Dad hope that you will meet a good person in the future. But right now, can you really let go of Colin? I hope you can express your sadness if you feel down. Don't suppress the pain in your heart and pretend to let go of him just to make us feel at ease. Listening to their words, I had an indescribable feeling in my heart. It seemed that not only Colin, but also my in-laws, all wanted to keep this child. Before, when they persuaded me to have an abortion, it was just because they thought that since I only had Colin in my heart, I definitely wouldn't agree. They were just saying some polite words to persuade me. However, I quickly let it go. After all, for their family, I was always an outsider. I'm tired. I'm going to rest first. I nodded, too lazy to argue with them anymore. I turned around and went upstairs. I definitely won't give birth to this child. But since they are so resistant, I'm afraid they won't allow me to have an abortion easily. It seems that I still need to find an opportunity to leave their house as soon as possible. As for Colin's revenge, I will take it slowly. At night, I went to the living room to pour water. I heard the conversation between my in-laws and Colin again. Mom, we absolutely can't let Linda have an abortion. It was Colin's voice. I paused in my steps, and then I heard him continue. I have weak sperm by nature, and Maria's health is also not good. She can't stand the hardship of pregnancy. Now that my elder brother is gone, this might be the only child I'll ever have in my life. If she has an abortion, won't our family really be left without descendants? Since she doesn't want to raise the child, we can have it born and let Maria raise it. Maria has always wanted a child, but due to her health reasons, she hasn't been able to have one. She is gentle and kind, and if she raises the child, she will definitely treat it sincerely. My mother-in-law let out a sigh and said sorrowfully, I don't want our family to be without descendants either. But now Linda not only wants to have an abortion, but she also wants to remarry. You know that the development of the company can't do without the help of her father. If she insists on it, we can't stop her at all. As soon as she finished speaking, my father-in-law said reproachfully, if Linda has an abortion and remarries, she will have nothing to do with our family anymore. And the Yi family won't support us either. I've always said that you should take on the responsibility of both families. This way, not only can we keep Linda, but we can also keep the child. You just refused. Look, what should we do now? Upon hearing this, Colin wasn't in a hurry. Instead, he sneered and said with certainty, come on, do you think she really wants to have an abortion and remarry someone else? She loves me so much. If it weren't for this child, she would have committed suicide long ago. This child is her spiritual pillar. How could she be willing to have an abortion? As for remarrying, she's just saying it out of spite. Besides me, who else could she possibly have in her heart? Don't worry, she definitely won't remarry, and she will definitely give birth to the child and be a part of our family for the rest of her life. Listening to Colin's confident words, I couldn't help but sneer in my heart. TSK. What they say on the internet is indeed true. Men are really ordinary yet confident creatures. My mother-in-law paused for a moment and seemed to be convinced by Colin. She was too abnormal today. It really seems like she's throwing a tantrum out of spite. Colin said confidently. Before, when you proposed the matter of taking on the responsibility of both families, Maria hit her. She has been spoiled since childhood, so it's normal for her to be angry. Moreover, although she believes that it was my elder brother who died, but she loves me so much, when she sees my face, she will definitely still have feelings. It's inevitable that she will subconsciously regard the current elder brother as me. This morning, I guess she saw how affectionate I was with Maria and felt uncomfortable. coupled with what happened yesterday when she was hit. She deliberately said those words out of spite. She already has a hard time accepting my death. In her eyes, if the elder brother can take on the responsibility of both families and she can treat the elder brother as my substitute to numb herself and continue living, that would be fine too. She made such a fuss just to deliberately threaten me and make me agree to take on the responsibility of both families. Upon hearing this, my mother-in-law complained dissatisfiedly. Linda is also at fault. If she wants something, she should just say it directly. Your father and I treat her like our own daughter and will try our best to accommodate her. Why does she have to say these spiteful words and deliberately break our hearts? And you? I've always said that you should take on the responsibility of both families and take care of her more on a daily basis. Upon hearing this, Colin's tone was a bit impatient. He interrupted. All right, I get it. Linda is really troublesome. Tomorrow, you can mention the matter of taking on the responsibility of both families to her again. This time I will agree. Just for the sake of this child, I'll compromise one more time. Early the next morning, during breakfast, my father-in-law indeed brought up the matter of taking on the responsibility of both families again. Linda, eat more. Why do you look even thinner? He sighed. It seems that this child is really dragging you down. Dad thinks it would be better to let Alex take on the responsibility of both families and take care of you. My mother-in-law also nodded and advised. You are Colin's wife, and Alex is the eldest son of our family. As Colin's elder brother, he should take on the burden of the family. It's only right for him to take care of you. You don't have to feel uncomfortable about it. I don't know what Colin said to Maria last night. This time she didn't voice her opposition again. She just had an unpleasant expression, tightly clenched her fists, and stared at me with some jealousy. I looked up at Colin. Colin looked impatient and his tone wasn't very good. Heh, you proposed having an abortion yesterday just to make me take on the responsibility of both families. Right. Fine. For the sake of Colin's bloodline, your sister-in-law and I will make the sacrifice and agree to it. Finally, he scolded unhappily. After I take on the responsibility of both families, you'd better stop throwing tantrums and saying things like having an abortion. Don't break our hearts and the child's heart again. Listening to his words, I was almost driven to laughter out of anger. He has done so many heartless things, and he still wants a child. May he be left without descendants. Originally, I had some genuine feelings and couldn't bear to part with my in-laws, but after hearing their conversation last night, I completely lost my feelings for this family. They were nice to me just because of my father. To them, I was just an outsider they could use. It's good this way. I won't have anything to worry about in the future. I shook my head and said coldly, there's no need for the matter of taking on the responsibility of both families. Big brother and sister-in-law can just live their own lives well. As for my child, you don't have to worry about it. Early this morning, I called my father and asked the driver to come and pick me up. The person hasn't arrived yet. Since everyone here except me is from their family and it's not in my favor, I'd better not make things too unpleasant for now. So I tried to look at my in-laws calmly. My father is always worried that I'm too sad and afraid that I might do something stupid. He said he wants to pick me up and let me stay at his place for a few days. My in-laws still wanted to stop me. But not long after I finished speaking, my father came with the driver in person. They quickly sent me out with smiling faces. My father looked at my haggard and thin appearance, and the big and burly man's eyes turned red with distress. He naturally didn't have a good expression towards their family. With a dark face, he ignored their family throughout and just took me away. My in-laws looked at me awkwardly, and Colin glared at me with a gloomy face, looking as if he had been humiliated. In the past, I didn't want to make my in-laws and Colin feel embarrassed. Even if my father was unhappy, I would act coquettishly to make him be nicer. But now, I don't want to pay attention to this family at all and just got in the car directly. After the car drove out of their house, I started to coax my father gently. My father doesn't know what Colin did to hurt me. It's just that he thinks I'm thinner and haggard. And it's because their family didn't take good care of me that he's angry with them. My father has always been a protective parent. I lost my mother when I was young, and he never remarried. He played the role of both father and mother and doted on me and raised me to be this old. People who know him say that he loved my mother deeply. When my mother died during childbirth, he could hardly go on living. It was me who gave him the hope to live on. Since then, he has focused all his attention on me. When Colin died, I was still thinking that my father and I were probably both unfortunate people who had experienced the pain of losing a loved one. I even wanted to follow my father's example and regard the child as the hope to live on and dote on it and raise it well. But I didn't expect. My parents had true love. I'm just a joke. I met Alex and Colin in kindergarten. I remember that when I was very young, I liked to follow Alex around. My father saw that I liked him, so he simply went to their house and arranged an engagement between me and Alex. Then he started to support their family. He helped their family, which had just entered a well-off state, to start a business step by step and establish a listed company. Later, my marriage partner was changed to Colin. I was also humiliated. He was afraid that their family would look down on me. In order to make my life better, he provided even more help to their family. Until now, their family has tasted the benefits. No wonder they are reluctant to let go. They have used me for so many years and have hurt me so badly. I will make them pay it all back with interest. I already contacted a private detective yesterday to monitor their family 24 hours a day. I heard that after I left. Colin, who rarely got into trouble in front of my father, kicked over the table in anger. He roared, "Linda did it on purpose. Heh, she deliberately called her father here to put pressure on us. I've already agreed to take on the responsibility of both families. Why is she still doing this?" My mother-in-law let out a sigh and advised, "Linda has been spoiled since childhood. It must be that your tone was not good, and you were reluctant. And Maria even dared to hit her. It made her unhappy, so she called Mr. Yi here. It's good for her to go back and stay for a few days. The medical facilities at Mr. Ye's place are better, and it's better for protecting the pregnancy. With Linda staying there, the child will be safer. After a few days, we'll go and pick her up. You should speak more softly then and mention the matter of taking on the responsibility of both families again. When her anger subsides and she sees our sincere attitude, she will come back." Colin snorted coldly. "She caused so much trouble and threatened us, just to make me willingly beg her to let me take on the responsibility of both families. Fine. For the sake of our family and the child, I'll make the sacrifice one more time." My father-in-law also frowned. This Linda is indeed a bit too spoiled. With a little unhappiness, she made the whole family lose face. No wonder Alex and Colin don't like her. Fortunately, she loves Colin deeply and is willing to compromise for Colin. Otherwise, no one in our family could really deal with her. Colin sneered. "Who cares about her love? Maria is 100 times better than her. Let's go over there after more than a month. When she's anxious, she won't play hard to get anymore and will readily agree then." Upon hearing this, my in-laws all nodded in agreement. I looked at the secretly recorded video of their family sent to me by the private detective. I couldn't help but sneer repeatedly. Do they still expect me to give birth to a child for their family? On that day, I told my father about my plan to have an abortion. My father knew how painful it was for me to be pregnant with this child. He was already very distressed. When he heard that I wanted to have an abortion, he naturally agreed without hesitation. He immediately started arranging the most experienced doctor to perform the operation on me. I also told my father that he didn't need to protect their family anymore and didn't need to provide them with any more convenience. Of course, I didn't tell my father that Colin had someone kidnap and humiliate me in the past. Otherwise, according to my father's temper and his protective nature towards me, he would definitely want to kill Colin. It's not worth it to let my father take such a big risk for this scumbag. Colin, I will make Colin pay the price in other ways. After the abortion, I spent a month recuperating. I didn't have to vomit or get injections anymore. My body was getting better and better, and I gained a lot of weight. These days, my father was overjoyed to see that my health was improving. When he heard that I had completely let go of Colin, he excitedly started arranging blind dates for me. He said he wanted to find a good-looking and obedient man to marry into our family for me. I was somewhat helpless. I didn't want to find another man, but I couldn't resist my father. The news had already spread. Countless men came to my doorstep every day, lining up to be interviewed for marrying into my family. In a month's time, without the support of the Yi family, their family was left with a whole bunch of troubles. Finally, they couldn't hold back and came to find me with Colin. When they arrived at the gate of the villa, they happened to encounter the group of men queuing up for the interview to marry into my family. Colin looked at the group of people at the gate in confusion and frowned. What are all these people doing? It's such a mess. He wanted to move forward, but the group of men blocked the gate, and he couldn't get through at all. He tried to push through the crowd and move forward. As a result, he was impatiently grabbed by a man. "Hey, Are you also here to marry into the Yi family for Miss Linda? You have to queue up. We have our rules here. No one is allowed to cut in line. My in-laws and Colin were immediately stunned. Colin asked in surprise. Marrying into the family. Which Miss Linda? The man looked at Colin as if he were a fool. Which other Miss Linda could it be? Mr. Yi only has one daughter. Right. Of course. It's Miss Linda. I heard that her husband passed away some time ago. Since Miss Linda is such a nice girl and is now single, there are naturally a lot of people who want to marry into her family. See those? All those more than 100 people queuing up in front are here for that. As he spoke, he pointed at the more than 100 people queuing up ahead. Colin's expression was as if he had eaten something disgusting. He said in disbelief, "What are you all thinking? Linda is still pregnant with her late husband's child, and she only has her late husband in her heart. She is impossible to find another man. Just disperse quickly." Upon hearing this, the man said again, "Ah, you don't understand. Miss Linda has already had an abortion, and Mr. Yi has already spread the word that Miss Linda has let go of that dead man of hers and wants to remarry. Now everyone has a chance." Had an abortion. Colin's father, and Colin's mother all said in unison. Their faces all looked extremely ugly. Colin immediately sneered. "Impossible. She values her late husband and the child more than her own life. She would never let go of him and have an abortion. And as for you," Colin looked at these people with disdain, leaving aside the fact that she was violated by kidnappers before and is already a so-called damaged goods. Now she was still pregnant with someone else's child and has another man in her heart. You are all rushing to marry into her family. Are you addicted to wearing a green hat? As soon as he said this, the faces of all the people queuing up turned ugly. One person angrily said, "How can you talk like that? Miss Linda was also a victim back then. How can you call her that? I heard that when she married into your family, she was filial to her in-laws and considerate of her husband. She is a rare good woman, and you actually dare to slander her like this. That's right, brothers. Let's go and teach him a lesson." Later, Colin was held down and beaten up. In the end, he could only reluctantly queue up. They didn't dare to leave halfway, for fear that if they came back later, they would have to queue up all over again. I heard that by the time it was his turn, it was already the third day. He and his parents queued up without sleep for 3 days and finally entered my villa. As soon as she saw me, Colin's mother started to complain with red eyes. "Linda, those people outside are like bandits. Look at how they beat up Alex. Your father is also at fault. You are still carrying our family's child. Even if he feels sorry for you, he can't ignore your wishes and find someone to marry into our family for you. It's really outrageous. This time you must talk to him properly and tell him not to be so willful in the future." Colin stood beside her with a cold face and snorted. "We've come to pick you up. Come back with us. After all, you are Colin's wife. It's not right to always stay at your parents' home. Also, I'm willing to take on the responsibility of both families. Take care of you and the child. Treat the child as my own, and regard you as my wife. But remember, your sister-in-law will always be the primary wife." I couldn't help but laugh out of anger. Primary wife and secondary wife. It's been so many years since the founding of the People's Republic of China. He was still daydreaming. Colin's mother looked me up and down and also smiled. "The doctors here are really good. It's only been a little over a month, and you look much better in health. When we leave, ask those doctors to come back with us to take care of you. But I still have to say something about those people outside. It's really outrageous. They insisted that you had an abortion. This is not just cursing you. It's simply immoral." Hearing this, I finally stopped being silent and said, "They are right. I have indeed had an abortion. I have let go of Colin and am ready to start a new life." After I said this, the expressions of Colin and the others completely changed. "What did you say?" Colin asked anxiously. Colin's mother also quickly said, "Linda, don't joke about this matter." I looked at them coldly and said indifferently, "Now, I have lost my child, and Colin is also dead. I have nothing to do with your family anymore. I won't go back with you. You can go back, and don't come again in the future." After saying that, I called the security guards and asked them to escort them out. Colin's face changed. He stared at me in disbelief with wide eyes and an ugly expression. "Are you crazy? How dare you drive us away? I've already agreed to take on the responsibility of both families. What more do you want? All right. There is a limit to your play acting. If you reject me this time, I won't come again in the future. Don't regret it later." Colin's mother also smiled awkwardly. I can see that you've gained some weight. How could the child be gone? You must be joking. Are you still angry about what happened before and lying to us out of spite? Linda, Mom has to scold you. You are too willful and always break our family's heart. I was too lazy to pay attention to them anymore. I directly threw the abortion report at them. Then I asked the bodyguards to drive them out. I heard that after they were driven out. Looking at the report, they knew that I had indeed aborted the only bloodline of their family. All of them were furious. They even forgot for a moment that they still had to rely on my father for their livelihood. They made a big scene outside, scolding me for being shameless and killing their family's child. They cursed that I would definitely get my comeuppance. The people queuing up outside only then realized that they were from that family. Now, hearing them scold me and remembering what Colin had said about me being a damaged goods before, they all wanted to show off in front of me. They rushed up and beat them up again, and the beating was quite severe. I heard that in the end, they lay on the ground and couldn't even curse anymore. After my father learned that their family had come and had slandered me several times, he was extremely angry. He no longer showed any mercy to their family and directly started targeting them. At first, after Colin and the others went back, they were still talking tough, saying that they wouldn't forgive me for having an abortion. Unless I got pregnant with another child of their family, they wouldn't agree to let me go back or allow me to pay respects to Colin. Otherwise, I would never be able to go to Colin's grave in my lifetime. However, in less than a month, their family went bankrupt under my father's targeting. They lost everything. Even their only villa was taken away. In the end, they could only end up on the streets. As for Maria, when she married Alex, she had her eyes on him because he was the eldest son of their family and could inherit the family and live a good life with him. Later, when Alex died, she also realized that Colin was pretending to be Alex. But she didn't care, as long as whoever could inherit the family was her husband. Now, their family had no money. Of course, she wouldn't accompany them to live a hard life. Before long, she attached herself to a wealthy businessman and became his mistress, abandoning them. Colin was furious, cursing Maria as a bitch and trying to hit her. As a result, he was almost beaten to death by the wealthy businessman's bodyguards. Colin's father and mother blamed him, saying that if he hadn't insisted on pretending to be Alex in the first place, things wouldn't have ended up like this and that he had ruined the whole family. Colin, however, seemed to have grasped at a straw. He vowed to Colin's father and mother, "I love him so much. If I knew he was still alive, I definitely wouldn't remarry. I wouldn't ignore their family. Their family still has a chance to be saved." Then, he excitedly came to my doorstep. He shouted that he was Colin, not Alex, that it was his elder brother who had died back then, and that he had lost his memory and thought he was Alex. He said that he remembered everything now, that he loved me, and begged me to meet him. He also said that since the child was gone, we could have another one, and that he had already forgiven me for having an abortion. Coincidentally, I had already collected the evidence that Colin had hired someone to kidnap and harm me. The police officers directly came to my doorstep and arrested him. Before leaving, he still struggled angrily. "Let me go. Do you know who my wife is? It's Linda. If you dare to arrest me, she won't let you off." Only then did I leisurely walk out and softly say in his ear, "Colin, I've always known it was you. You look like a clown now. Oh, and it's time for you to pay for what you had the kidnappers do to me back then." Colin's eyes widened little by little, and he looked at me in disbelief. You actually know everything. Why I had been acting so strangely." He finally understood everything now. He stopped struggling and fell to the ground with a deathly pale face. However, soon he got up again, hugged my leg, and begged for my forgiveness, saying that he had done all this because he loved me. I sneered, had someone pull him away, and turned around and went back into the villa. Extra chapter. Colin, such a selfish man. He would never look for the reasons within himself. Now that he had fallen to such a state, he only thought that it was Maria's fault. So, the day after he was arrested, he escaped. He didn't go anywhere else but found Maria. He went crazy and stabbed Maria to death. After my father learned that it was Colin who had harmed me back then, he flew into a rage. He wanted to break into the prison and tear Colin apart. And he was also angry that I hadn't told him before. I smiled and stopped him, saying, "Dad, a person like him isn't worth your effort." Then I whispered a few words in his ear. He clapped his hands and laughed heartily. And only then did he give up the idea of doing it himself. With my father's operation, Colin's death sentence was changed to life imprisonment. After all, it would be too easy for him to die like that. Then, he followed the plan I came up with. He found several very special cellmates for Colin. One of them liked men, one of them liked playing BDSM games, and one of them had a violent tendency and liked to humiliate others. My father gave a sum of money to their families. When they went to visit the prison, he asked their families to take good care of Colin. He wanted to ensure that Colin would have a wonderful life in prison for the rest of his life. Later, I never got married. Instead, I started to join my father's company and learn business from him. My father often patted me on the shoulder and praised me. Daughter, Dad can only rest assured if his business empire is handed over to you. Men can't be relied on. Fortunately, you have the talent for this. Although he said that, he was still afraid that I would be lonely and always wanted to find someone to marry into my family as a pastime. The men queuing up for the interview stretched from our home to the company, but I rejected all of them. Later, my father also stopped being obsessed with finding someone to marry into my family. Instead, he found many male models who were good at making people happy for me as a pastime. He said that these men were all clean and had passed medical examinations. From time to time, a new batch would be replaced. Male models who didn't talk about feelings, could make people happy, and only required payment. This time I didn't refuse. At the age of 32, I suddenly had the idea of having a child. So I went to a sperm bank and chose one. After 10 months of pregnancy, I gave birth to a daughter who belonged only to me. She looked a lot like me when I was a child. After my father saw that I had taken over the company, he simply retired and stayed at home to take care of the child. With his doting, the little girl became a lawless little rascal. I was always quite frustrated about it. In the future, I will take care of Maria for the rest of my life on behalf of my elder brother. Please don't mention the matter of taking on the responsibility of both families anymore, so as not to make Maria sad. He didn't listen. He said, I've spoiled you so much, but you still suffered grievances when I wasn't paying attention. My dear granddaughter should be spoiled even more. She must never suffer any grievances in the future. When my daughter was 2 years old, in a half-asleep state at night, she nestled in my arms and said, Mom, actually I saw you a long time ago. I smiled amusedly and asked, how long ago was that? She said softly, I can't remember clearly. I only remember that Mom said she was afraid that if she gave birth to me, I would be born without an anus and told me to come to you a few years later. Mom, what is without an anus? She blinked her innocent eyes and looked up at me. I smiled awkwardly. Go to sleep. You're just a little kid. Why do you have so many questions? The end.